Marley, taking you through some of the things people are talking about and some of the stuff they're sharing around the world. On Newsfeed today, a scientist on the verge of eradicating tuberculosis. WhatsApp takes on an Israeli spy company in the courts. How Saudi Arabia are exploiting Instagram influencers to make the kingdom look good. And a viral video of a dancing padre is one way to get into the weekend. And top of our newsfeed, tuberculosis. Scientists have been working for decades to try and find a way to treat a disease that kills more than 1 million each year. And now they say they may be closer than ever. Here's Adama.
Tuberculosis is a killer. It's one of the top 10 causes of death around the globe. The disease claimed 1.5 million lives in 2018. Now, researchers say they've developed a vaccine that could save millions of lives. The current BCG vaccine helps prevent the disease in children, but it's not effective in adults. More than 3,700 adults in Kenya, South Africa and Zambia have tested the new vaccine in the drug's initial trials. Its success there was announced at a lung health summit in Hyderabad in India. Some experts say it could be a game changer.
What is really remarkable is that it was effective in adults who were already infected with Mycobacterium tuberculosis. That is the causative agent of TB. As most people who are infected with Mycobacterium tuberculosis do not get TB, we have believed that infection confers some degree of protection. As a result, it is really exciting that a vaccine has been shown to improve on this natural immunity.
TB is a bacterial infection caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It's transmitted through the inhalation of bacteria from the coughs or sneezes of an infected person. It mainly affects the lungs, but not everyone who's infected gets sick. This is called latent TB. If the bacterium multiplies enough to overcome the immune system, this is when TB becomes a disease. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says there's a 5 to 10% chance of anyone developing the active form of the illness. According to the World Health Organization, 2/3 of all cases are in India, China, Indonesia, the Philippines, Pakistan, Nigeria, Bangladesh, and South Africa. TB is increasingly becoming drug resistant, especially in India. The country accounts for more than 1 in 4 of all cases worldwide. Scientists say air pollution and poor sanitary conditions are key causes. There are fears this toxic mix is creating a public health emergency.
We have the highest burden in terms of drug-resistant TB in the world globally, and again, it's difficult to deal with, and it needs the right kind of diagnosis. But there is medication available now, except the access to these drugs is limited, and they are pretty expensive.
And more money is needed to keep up the fight.
Where you live should not decide whether you live. Can we agree on that in the conference today? Where you live cannot decide whether you live. Do we agree with that in the conference today? We do. Yes.
We are targeting to save 16 million lives. We are targeting to halve by 2023 the annual death toll from these 3 epidemics.
2 weeks ago, donors pledged $14 billion to fight TB, AIDS and malaria at the Global Fund Summit in Lyon. Researchers say if more trials of the vaccine are successful, it will become available from 2028. And while that might seem a long time in the future, those involved in the testing say we are now closer than ever to making TB a thing of the past.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the other things that caught our eye on social media. Well, President Trump says he's moving house, and the internet says New York City is delighted. Trump says he's moving from Manhattan to Palm Beach, following a well-worn path of aging New Yorkers who see out their years in the warmth of Florida. Trump, of course, tweeted the news of his departure. He was met with this from the governor of NYC, who says, "Good riddance, he doesn't even pay taxes there anyway." A comedian from Tanzania called Idris Sultan shared this picture. It's him using the Face Swap app. His face swapped with the country's president, John Magufuli. Now, he is being held under the country's Cybercrime Act for using a computer to impersonate someone else. It's reported that he could be jailed for 7 years if convicted. George R.R. Martin has been blogging rather than finishing that Game of Thrones book, saying he will not take on any new scripts until he finishes the final book in the series. It's called Winds of Winter. He's been writing the text for 10 years, and some Game of Thrones fans have complained, saying it's taking too long. I guess they've never attempted to write a work of fiction. It takes time if you want it to be any good, and it may not be very good anyway. And the McDonald's franchise out of Portugal has had to apologise after they produced these ads for Halloween. It's a 2-for-1 on ice cream sundaes, and they use the tagline "Sunday, Bloody Sundae." I guess it has strawberry sauce in it, not actual blood, but I digress. The apology came because the tagline is borrowing from the U2 song about one of the worst moments of the Troubles, the sectarian conflict on the island of Ireland. Bloody Sunday refers to the 30th of January 1972, when the British Army shot and killed 14 people who were taking part in a civil rights march in Derry. Legal proceedings have begun between one of the world's biggest tech platforms and an Israeli spy company in a case which reveals just how insecure our phones can be. Matteo has the story.
It's what the world's most widely used messaging app is for. End-to-end encryption is supposed to guarantee only those in a chat can read the messages. But Facebook-owned WhatsApp has filed a lawsuit against Israeli technology firm NSO Group. They say NSO used malware software to read encrypted messages from 1,400 users across 20 countries between April and May. The malware could open messages, capture the user's screen, and log keystrokes. The suit accuses NSO of targeting journalists, human rights activists, and political opposition. Their identities have not been disclosed. NSO denies the charges.
In the strongest possible terms, we dispute today's allegations and will vigorously fight them. The sole purpose of NSO is to provide technology to licensed government intelligence and law enforcement agencies to help them fight terrorism and serious crime.
But NSO has faced similar accusations in the past. A 2018 New York Times report found the UAE asked NSO to hack the phones of a Qatari emir and a Saudi prince. It also faced backlash over the role its spyware is suspected of playing in the killing of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. The firm has also been accused of attempting to spy on an Amnesty International employee in London.
The reports on NSO alleged exploit of a security breach on WhatsApp have not been verified yet by Amnesty International. But if true, they fully exemplify our claim to the Israeli court that the Ministry of Defense must revoke the export license of NSO Group that has gone completely out of hand.
A recent Financial Times report showed the app is still vulnerable to malware. So this NSO case may not be the last WhatsApp security breach.
And we will keep spinning around the world now for some other stories you need to know this Friday. Now, people in Spain are outraged that 5 men have been charged with the sexual abuse of a 14-year-old rather than the sexual assault of her because she was unconscious, and the court said there was no violence used. The men's sentences are between 10 and 12 years. They could have been given between 15 and 20 for the more serious charge. In a first, some executives and employees of a logging company have been charged with the murder of some indigenous activists in Peru. 4 people were killed in 2014 trying to stop the destruction of the Amazon rainforest. They were shot dead. The 5 people facing charges could be jailed for decades. Human rights groups say that successful prosecution will set a global precedent for indigenous rights and for the protection of native land. The worst drought in 35 years in southern Africa is affecting a record 45 million people. Climate change is a cause for the increasingly inhabitable conditions in large parts of the continent, and the damage caused by natural disasters like Hurricane Idai has made the situation worse. The United Nations has launched an appeal for urgent funding to mitigate the impending disaster. And demonstrators in Hong Kong have defied the law and worn masks during protests yesterday. Many were Halloween-themed. People have been on the streets of Hong Kong for 5 months. They began by demanding a proposed law which would have allowed suspects in the city to be extradited to China be scrapped. And when that law was scrapped, they had more demands, including that the police are investigated for how they've treated protesters. Hong Kong will officially become part of China in 2047. And President Trump is apparently withholding $105 million in aid to Lebanon after the resignation of the government there following protests. The aid was for military assistance. It is reported now that without the American money, Lebanon will get the money they need from Russia. Well, next, Ahmed takes a look at how Saudi Arabia has been using people who use Instagram to try and rehabilitate the reputation of the kingdom.
Saudi Arabia has an image problem. The murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi, its bombing campaign in Yemen, its appalling human rights record, and this has all contributed to global skepticism over the kingdom. But Saudi Arabia is trying to use Instagram stars to change all of that and rehabilitate the country's image. So let's break it down. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is getting Instagram influencers to visit the country through the Saudi Tourism Board and an NGO called Gateway KSA. This NGO was founded by Dutch-Australian Nelleke van de Zandvoort Kipsel, and former intelligence chief Prince Turki Al Faisal is an executive member. According to Guardian Australia, which broke this story, the NGO hosts intercultural exchanges. They contact Instagram personalities and organize all expense-paid supervised trips. Influencers are escorted around in helicopters, taken for scuba diving in the Red Sea, put up in pricey hotels, and driven out to an ancient, unfinished tomb in the Al Ola Desert, and all to publish positive posts about the kingdom. Examples include Aggie, with 863,000 followers, posted a picture of her in a headscarf in Al Ola. Jay Alvarez, with a whopping 6 million followers, posted the same photo as Aggie. In addition to Australians Gap Skanu with 363,000 followers and Tara Whiteman with 1.3 million followers. They have all been influential in selling Saudi Arabia to young tourists. From the NGO's side, the founder has clearly stated that it's, quote, real people sharing real experiences, and from that they can judge and form their own opinion. We don't guide them in how or what to think, whether positively or negatively. Meanwhile, Instagrammers like 22-year-old photographer Gab Skanu, who is reportedly one of the first influencers enlisted by Gateway KSA to film this video in February 2018, defended himself by simply reiterating that his trip was done for creative purposes and that he did not consider political implications. And hence the question, are these Instagrammers, along with the Saudi authorities, trying to whitewash the kingdom's problems? Or is there nothing wrong with Instagrammers highlighting the beauty of the kingdom, which is liberalizing at a rapid pace and opening its door to the world?
And last up, some viral video of a padre from Puerto Rico who has the moves. Now, this is one of those things that Americans call pep rallies. I think it happens around homecoming, whatever that is. But here comes Ricardo Rivera Ortiz, full of the spirit of the Lord and throwing shapes. Now, he is the cardinal at the Cardinal Gibbons High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This video of him dancing has been watched hundreds of thousands of times and is really how everyone should be getting into their weekend. And that will do from the Newsfeed team. Reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions. You'll find me at Kamali Melbourne. You'll find us 24/7 on YouTube. You can subscribe to our channel, and why not follow me on Twitter? Follow, subscribe and add, and I will see you again soon.